a teenager finds himself alone in the cockpit of a commercial airliner at 30,000 feet after both pilots collapsed unconscious. With no flying experience and 200 terrified passengers relying on him, he must land the plane before fuel runs out or everyone dies. Before we dive in, what time are you listening? Where are you from? Drop a comment below and tell me. And please like and subscribe for more videos like this. Marcus Chen was 16 years old when he boarded Flight 447 from Seattle to Denver on a cold February morning. He settled into seat 12A, plugged in his headphones, and opened his laptop to work on a school project about aviation systems. The irony of that choice would not be lost on him later. Marcus had always been fascinated by airplanes. He spent countless hours watching cockpit videos online, studying flight simulators, and reading pilot manuals he found in the library. His father called it an obsession. His teachers said he was wasting his time, but Marcus could not help himself. There was something about the precision of flight, the mathematics of lift and thrust, the beautiful complexity of it all that made him feel alive. He dreamed of becoming a pilot one day, though his family could barely afford his school supplies, let alone flight training that cost tens of thousands of dollars. So he learned what he could from free resources, absorbing every detail like his life depended on it. The flight attendant passed by with the beverage cart. Marcus asked for orange juice. The plane leveled off at cruising altitude. Everything seemed perfectly normal. Row after row of passengers settled in for the routine 2-hour flight. Some read books. Others watched movies on their screens. A baby cried 3 rows back. Outside the window, clouds stretched endlessly like cotton fields. Marcus returned to his project, typing notes about hydraulic systems and backup power generators. He did not know that in exactly 47 minutes, his theoretical knowledge would become desperately, terrifyingly practical. Captain Rebecca Morrison had 23 years of flying experience. First Officer James Walsh had 12. Together, they had logged over 30,000 hours in the air. They went through their pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency, communicating in the shorthand of professionals who trusted each other completely. The flight was unremarkable until it was not. At 32,000 feet, Captain Morrison felt a sudden tightness in her chest. She dismissed it as indigestion from the breakfast burrito she ate before the flight. 2 minutes later, the tightness became crushing pain. She gasped, clutching the yoke. First Officer Walsh turned toward her, concern flashing across his face. Before he could speak, his vision blurred. His head felt impossibly heavy. He tried to reach for the radio, but his arm would not obey. Both pilots had eaten the same catered meal that morning from the crew lounge. Both meals contained shellfish that had been improperly stored. Both pilots were now experiencing severe allergic reactions that spiraled into anaphylactic shock. Captain Morrison slumped forward against the controls. The autopilot disengaged with a sharp warning chime. First Officer Walsh tried to stand, managed one step, then collapsed between the seats. The cockpit door was locked, as regulations required. Inside that small space, 2 highly trained professionals lay unconscious while the aircraft they were supposed to control began a slow, shallow descent. Nobody in the passenger cabin knew yet. The plane flew on, seemingly stable, carrying 217 people, toward disaster at 500 miles per hour. A flight attendant named Sarah Martinez noticed the altitude alert first. She had worked for the airline for 6 years and knew that sound was not normal. She went to the cockpit door and knocked. No response. She knocked harder, calling out their names. Still nothing. She used the intercom system to contact the cockpit. Silence. Her training kicked in. She retrieved the emergency access code and unlocked the door. What she saw made her blood turn to ice. Both pilots unconscious. The altimeter showing a steady descent. Warning lights blinking on the instrument panel. The plane was flying itself, but not for much longer. Sarah ran back into the cabin, her professional composure barely holding. She grabbed the intercom handset with shaking hands and made an announcement that nobody on board would ever forget. "We have a medical emergency in the cockpit. If there is anyone on this aircraft with flying experience, please identify yourself immediately." This is not a drill. The words hit Marcus like electricity. Flying experience. He had hundreds of hours in He had studied commercial aircraft systems obsessively, but he had never actually flown a real plane, never touched real controls, never felt the weight of actual lives depending on his decisions. He looked around the cabin. Nobody moved. Nobody stood up. The seconds stretched into eternity. He thought about his mother, who worked 2 jobs to support them, his little sister, who looked up to him, all the passengers around him who had families, dreams, futures. Someone had to try. Marcus unbuckled his seatbelt and stood on legs that felt like water. He raised his hand. The flight attendant rushed to him, hope and desperation mixed in her eyes. She did not ask his age. She did not question his credentials. She grabbed his arm and pulled him toward the cockpit. The scene inside was worse than Marcus had imagined. Captain Morrison was slumped over the yoke, her weight pushing the control column forward. First Officer Walsh lay crumpled on the floor. The instrument panels blazed with warnings. Marcus had seen these exact instruments in his simulator. He knew what every dial meant, every button's function. But the simulator never included the smell of sweat and fear. It never had unconscious bodies. It never made his hands shake so badly he could barely grip the seat. Sarah helped him pull the captain back and strap her into a rear. Marcus slid into the captain's seat. It was still warm. He put his hands on the yoke and felt the plane respond to his touch. It was real. All of it was terrifyingly real. The altitude was 28,000 feet and dropping. He needed to level off before they descended into more congested airspace. Marcus pulled back gently on the yoke. Too gently. The descent rates barely changed. He pulled harder. The nose lifted. Too much. The plane pitched up sharply, throwing passengers against their seatbelts. He pushed forward, overcompensating. The aircraft bucked and swayed like a boat in rough water. People in the cabin screamed. Marcus forced himself to breathe. Smooth inputs. Small corrections, like the simulator. He found the autopilot controls and tried to re-engage the system, but it refused. Something about the violent maneuvering had triggered safety lockouts. He would have to fly manually. Marcus keyed the radio with trembling fingers. He had memorized emergency frequencies from his studies. "This is Flight 447. We have an emergency. Both pilots are unconscious. I am a passenger with no formal training attempting to fly this aircraft. I need help, now." The response came immediately. "Flight 447, this is Denver Center. We copy your emergency. Stay calm. We are going to talk you through this. What is your current altitude?" Marcus checked the instruments. 26,000 feet and descending. Airspeed 280 knots. He relayed the information. The controller's voice remained steady, professional, but Marcus could hear the tension underneath. Flight 447, you need to arrest your descent immediately. Pull back on the yoke gently until the vertical speed indicator shows 0. Marcus did as instructed. This time his inputs were smoother. The descent rate slowed, then stopped. The altimeter steadied at 25,000 feet. Good job, 447. You have stopped the descent. Now we need to get that autopilot engaged. Can you see the autopilot panel? Marcus scanned the overhead console. He found the autopilot master switch. He flipped it. Warning lights blinked. The system refused to engage. I cannot get it to work. The controller paused. Okay, we are going to fly this manually then. What is your experience level? Marcus swallowed hard. I have about 300 hours in a flight simulator. Home computer setup. I have studied commercial aircraft systems extensively, but I have never flown a real airplane. The pause was longer this time. When the controller spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made Marcus's stomach clench. Flight 447, you are in command of a Boeing 737 with 217 people on board. I am going to be with you every step of the way. We are going to get you on the ground safely. Do you understand? Yes. What is your name, son? Marcus Chen. Okay, Marcus. My name is Robert Hayes. I am a senior air traffic controller and I used to fly 737s for the Air Force. You are not alone up there. We have multiple controllers coordinating your flight path. We are clearing all other traffic from your area. We have emergency crews standing by. Your only job right now is to keep that plane stable and listen to my instructions. Can you do that? I can try. Trying is not good enough, Marcus. You are going to do this. Robert vectored Marcus onto the final approach course. The runway appeared in the distance, a thin grey line against the brown Colorado landscape. It looked impossibly small from this height. We are 8 miles from the runway. Your current altitude is 3,200 feet. You need to descend at approximately 700 feet per minute. That will put you on a 3-degree glide slope. Push the nose down slightly and reduce power until your vertical speed shows -700. Marcus made the adjustments. The ground began rising to meet him. The runway grew larger, 6 miles. Flaps to position 15. Marcus moved the flap lever. The aircraft slowed further. Airspeed now at 190 knots. 4 miles. Flaps to position 30. The plane was really slowing now. The controls felt mushy, less responsive. Marcus had to make larger inputs to get the same response. 2 miles. Final flaps. Position 40. Marcus extended the flaps fully. The aircraft settled into the final approach configuration. The runway filled his view now. No longer a line, but a real physical surface he was about to hit at over 100 miles per hour. Airspeed 145 knots. That is perfect, Marcus. Hold that speed. You are doing great. 1 mile. The runway lights passed beneath them. Marcus could see fire trucks lining the taxiway, emergency vehicles with lights flashing. The ground rushed up at terrifying speed. Half mile. In a few seconds, you are going to start your flare. When you are about 20 feet above the runway, pull back gently on the yoke. You want to raise the nose so the rear wheels touch first. After you touch down, pull the throttles all the way back and let the nose settle. Then immediately find the reverse thrust levers and pull them up. That will help you slow down. Marcus's heart hammered so hard he thought it might burst. Every instinct screamed that they were falling too fast, descending too steeply. The runway numbers appeared below. 50, 40 feet, 30, 20. Now Marcus, flare. Marcus pulled back on the yoke. The nose lifted. The ground seemed to pause for an instant. Then the rear wheels slammed into the concrete with a bone-jarring impact that sent a shockwave through the entire aircraft. The nose dropped. The front wheel hit hard. Marcus yanked the throttles to idle and fumbled for the reverse thrust levers. He found them and pulled. The engines roared. The plane shuddered and began decelerating rapidly. The runway rushed past. They were still going so fast. Too fast. Marcus pushed hard on the brake pedals at the top of the rudder controls. The aircraft slowed more. The end of the runway approached. They were not going to stop in time. Marcus pushed the brakes harder. Anti-skid systems chattered. The tires screamed. The plane slowed more. They rolled past the midpoint of the runway, past the 3/4 mark. Still moving. The end approached. Fire trucks raced alongside them. Finally, with 2,000 feet of runway remaining, Flight 447 came to a complete stop. Marcus sat frozen, hands locked on the yoke, unable to believe it was over. The radio exploded with voices. Cheers from the tower. Emergency crews reporting. Robert's voice cut through, thick with emotion. Marcus, you did it. You saved them all. You brought that plane down. You did the impossible. Marcus could not respond. His body started shaking uncontrollably. Sarah appeared beside him, tears streaming down her face, pulling him into a fierce hug. Emergency crews swarmed the aircraft. Paramedics rushed aboard to treat the unconscious pilots, who would both survive after treatment for anaphylaxis and asphyxiation. Passengers were evacuated down the emergency slides, crying and hugging each other. Marcus walked down the stairs on shaking legs. His mother was waiting at the terminal, having been notified by the airline. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing. News crews materialized from everywhere. Within hours, Marcus's face was on every screen in America. The teenager with no formal training who landed a commercial airliner. The boy who refused to let 217 people die. Aviation experts called it miraculous. His simulator experience, his obsessive study, his understanding of aircraft systems, all of it had combined at the exact moment it was needed most. But Marcus knew the truth. He had been terrified every single second. He had made mistakes. The landing had been rough and dangerous. He had been lucky as much as skilled. The FAA launched an investigation. They interviewed Marcus for hours. They wanted to understand how someone so young, so untrained, had managed what seemed impossible. The lead investigator, a former airline captain, sat across from Marcus and asked the question everyone wanted answered. How did you stay calm? How did you not panic? Marcus thought about it. I did panic. Every moment I was terrified. But there were 217 people on that plane. They did not ask to be in danger. They did not deserve to die because of bad food or bad luck. Someone had to try to save them. It had to be me because there was nobody else. So I did what I could with what I knew, and I hoped it would be enough. The investigator nodded slowly. You know what separates adequate pilots from great ones? Not flying skill, not hours logged. It is the ability to function when everything goes wrong, to make decisions under impossible pressure. You have that quality. You are 16 years old and you already have what most pilots never fully develop. Marcus Chen became a national hero. Offers poured in from flight schools, airlines, even the Air Force. A philanthropist paid for his complete flight training. On his 18th birthday, Marcus earned his private pilot license. At 20, his commercial rating. At 23, he was hired by a major airline. At 25, he became the youngest captain in the company's history. He never forgot Flight 447. Every time he settled into the left seat of a cockpit, he remembered what it felt like to be a terrified teenager desperately trying to save lives. It made him a better pilot, more careful, more humble, more aware that disaster could come from anywhere. That preparation and knowledge and calm determination were the only tools that stood between safety and catastrophe. Years later, during a training session for new pilots, Marcus told them about that February morning. He explained that flying was not about perfection. It was about responding to imperfection, about facing fear and choosing action over paralysis, about understanding that sometimes the only thing standing between tragedy and survival is one person willing to try. The story of Flight 447 became legend in aviation circles. The teenager who rewrote the rules of survival at 30,000 feet. The boy who proved that knowledge and courage could overcome impossible odds. And for Marcus, it became a reminder carried forward through every flight. That expertise matters. That preparation saves lives. That when everything goes wrong, somebody has to step up. Somebody has to try. And sometimes, against all odds, trying is enough.